Welcome to the Revision Wizards podcast. I'm V.E. Griffith, and I'm joined by my co-host from the opposite school of magic, Miss Catherine M.H.
This week, we'll be responding to a listener question from Shari.
I
I probably should have asked how to pronounce her name.
I don't know how to...
Their name.
Shari. With deepest apology, Shari, I know you're listening because I told you we were going to answer this. Next time, I'll ask you how to pronounce your name. Let me read what they wrote. We can just go for it. They write, "It's a big topic and lots of ways to get at it, but I'd like to hear how you each approach planning a story. Not outlining versus pantsing, that's the output, but from the idea of a story onward. Capture it on the back of an envelope, flesh it out with research, do up one of those bubblegrams, carving out the pieces you use. This probably isn't clear. My mind is full of a new story and it's too crowded up there for clarity." We get that.
Yeah. Let's start with you because your answer is a lot more simple than mine. Or I guess, hold on, wait, let's go back and let's look at the first part of this. We're going to break down this question.
Okay.
And it's the approach. So it's not the fact that we're outlining or pantsing. It's when that idea pops into your brain, what do you do?
When I get an idea for a story, the truth is that I don't really get an idea for a story. I have been working on my one story for so long that I kind of have a one-track mind about it at this point. I want to get it done before I start moving into other things. So maybe I'm repressing myself and not coming up with a lot of stories. But right now, as I'm going through editing this document that's now 51,000 words, up from 40,000 words. I checked this morning.
Ooh.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not focusing on idea generation at all. I have some ideas about how I would go about it that seem to fit my personality and my writing style, but I haven't gotten to those yet, and maybe over time those will evolve.
Okay. Easy answer.
Easy answer.
Mine will not be easy.
Okay. Well, let's hear yours.
So first, it would depend on the genre. If it is sci-fi, I'm probably just writing it immediately. Like it'll pop into my head and that's it. If it's steampunk, I'm going to do a little bit of a dive because my steampunk tends to usually follow really dark topics and heavy topics of modern day. So like the one I'm working on will be talking about like abortion rights and women's rights to not carry a child if they would prefer. So that'll be part of my next book. And so I'll do a thought where I sit and I'm like, "Whoo, this could be interesting." And then I have a very big process that I'm still trying to figure out how it works with the super note that I have. I have the paper process and then the typing process. So for me, if I want to flesh out an idea or like see if I like the story and run with it, I will write it out in pencil on a piece of paper. And if I like it or it really is starting to register and it's starting to ring and I just can't get it out of my head, then I will start to type it. For me, if I'm writing it on paper, it's not as important. If I start typing it, it is something that I would actually consider writing. That also goes for if I write in print or cursive. If I'm writing in print, I am just jotting down notes, so they're just small little bits for my brain. If I'm writing in cursive, it's more important. So it really just, for me, depends on the genre. But an idea can pop into my head just by looking at a Pinterest picture. And then I will copy that picture and be like, let's go. So the start of it depends on the genre. And yeah, where's the next part of this question? Let's see.
Do you capture it on the back of an envelope, flesh it out with research? What's your research process once you get to the point where you think, okay, this one's a go?
Okay, good one. I could use Scandal's Pen and Gambler's Rumor as a great example. I allowed myself 1 month to do research because I do have the historical and the steampunk elements to this. So after 1 month of research, I'm no longer allowed to do research unless it's a quick thing that I'm like, hold on, what year was this done in? And I can look that up really quick. But I do the big bulk of any kind of research that I think might be needed for that topic in that 1 month because you can go down a big rabbit hole by doing research. As for the envelope, the amount of, if you guys could see my paper closet, which my cat was just cuddling herself into, it got to such a point that my fiance was like, we're not buying paper anymore. So I have sticky notes, I have napkins, I have notebooks, I have the back of receipts, I have, you name it, I have written on it, and I have it stored in that closet. And it used to be like I would not leave a house without a piece of paper in my wallet, in my pocketbook, in my coat pockets. Trevor would carry paper on him in case I was ever like, oh my God, hon, I need to write this, or a pen. So he would have it with me because he's just like, we're not buying more paper. If I keep a piece of paper in my pocket, it'll be fine. So I've gotten better. I now have, I think it's like 17 open documents on my Supernote for just a few of the ideas that are going. And each time I start one, I'll like pick a genre and then be like, idea number one, and write out some things, idea number two, and we'll write out like a different version of it just to see if I like the idea of it. So for me, the research part is important if I'm deep diving. So my science fiction, I actually did a lot more research after I wrote the book the first time. And I realized that wasn't the smart idea to do. You can't launch the ship I want off a planet without actually destroying the planet. Like there was a lot that I really should have researched before writing it. So I definitely think researching a month in advance if you're gonna plan out stuff. If you have an idea that you're like, hey, this is important and I need to know about it, do that research ahead of time. Doesn't mean you have to become the expert in it and that you can't go back to researching, but it does help to have that little bit of basis. So when you are starting your writing, you're not being like, oh, wait, now I have to pause and go look this up. You know the start of something and you can go into it. So for my steampunk world, I deal with a lot of women's rights. So I did a lot of research into what women's rights were in the 1800s, which are not a lot, in case anybody wanted to know. And so when I was writing, I knew that I could pull into those ideas. Like I could sit there and be like, all right, I know women didn't have the right to see their children if they were divorced. I know that women weren't allowed to get a restraining order. I know women weren't allowed to keep their money if they were married. So, like, those things I knew. But if I wanted to know at what time did we get those rights, I would then like pause a moment, go look that up. But it wasn't something that would dive me into a rabbit hole of research. So, yeah, let's see. What kind of bubble diagrams? I don't think I've ever done a bubble diagram.
I have, and I found them to be not terribly helpful for me because if I do them on the computer, they take too long to deal with, to make the shapes, and then they're wrong, and they're the wrong size, and they don't connect right, and I have to hassle with it, and I don't like that. But if I do them by hand, then I can't read what the hell I wrote. So it's kind of like, now, having said that, I have tried a little bit on my new iPad that I got with the pen, and I really like that because it's relatively easy to change colors or change pen sizes, the size of the line that you get, but I haven't really used it for new idea generation yet. Most of what I have is trying to work out my current novel and trying to work out the next book in the series. I've used a workbook that our friend Jeff Elkins put together, previous guest on the show, the Dialogue Doctor, and it's actually really neat to put that on something like an iPad or a Supernote and use your pen to fill it out. Because if I did it by hand, I wouldn't do it because my hand would hurt too much. So, I bought a copy of the books for sort of bookshelf look and for reference, but I'm not going to be filling them out. That's what I think is my approach is going to be working out ideas on the iPad, and it may become something like a bullet point list that I keep open, so I can just pop open it's called Freeform, I believe. So I can pop open the Freeform app and just jot something down. And in Freeform, I can move the screen around so I've got almost infinite paper space. So I can make a note over on the left, and I can have my bullet list over on the right, and I can have a mind map in the middle. And then when all that doesn't work, I can create a new document, or I can erase it, or I can bring it up on my main computer, and so that I can look at it all together on my giant monitor. It's really a powerful, flexible tool for me, but I haven't gotten into using it for idea generation much. I've mostly been using it recently for editing and for trying to work out the missing parts of my story that my story coach has helped me identify.
I don't do a bubble diagram, but I have done what I nicknamed the page of death. And I need to find one of those for you, which I have in that closet back over there, so I can send you a picture. And I write everything I know about that story idea on a piece of paper. And you draw arrows, circle things, move them over there, point that this section then follows this section, but it goes back to this section. And it looks terrifying on one of those pages. The one I want to find is for my space opera, where I describe the 9-book series that I have going in my brain, where I'm like, I know it's not just 9 books, but at least it's starting with 9. And how I know how the story goes. And it's also mixed in with like math equations from when I was researching how much space would be needed on a spaceship, or how much food per square inch, or how many people could this size of a ship actually hold with oxygen ratios. But would have been very helpful if I labeled which equations those were, because now looking back at them, I'm like, I just know it works, but I have no idea where I got the numbers from. So these pages of death help me, because I can explain the entire thing to myself, or to whoever is unfortunate enough to be around and ask me, what are you writing? I like the pages of death because it gets me thinking, and I can have my story written out on a piece of paper that no one else would be able to figure out, even if they tried. Because I've looked back at some of them and I don't know what they're saying half the time. So it's really in the moment. And then for me as a pantser, that idea is now in my head and I can see it evolving. So it doesn't really matter if I'm writing it or if I'm changing it from what that piece of paper had said. It's not like I'm going to follow half of it anyway.
Typical you.
Yep. So I think that's how I go about I have an idea and I want to test it out. So I'll write it on paper, or I'll, page of death it. I'll do some research. And then one of the other things I do is I really use NaNoWriMo as my guessing game. I take in quotes, break from my normal writing stories to test out any of these bunny ideas. So that is my month to mess around, write whatever I want, see how it's working, and see if any of those stories really stick for me. And then from there, if they're really sticking and they're not going to go anywhere, then I will take it seriously and really start knuckling down into, I either have to do the research or we're just going to write. And I'm going to leave little quotes of, please research. You're dumb for not researching this. And other nasty things that I can tell myself that I laugh at when I go back to edit, and then curse myself, my past self, for not having done it first.
That sounds also very you. Well, I'm in the position where I am using some of these notes as I write them out. And sometimes I write them out, I save them to a PDF, and I file them into Scrivener where I have everything. And yeah, you can't see Miss Catherine giving me the death stare because Scrivener is the devil.
Scrivener. Oh, someone asked me about that recently, and I was like, it's the devil! And like ran away from the conversation. And they were like, okay.
Okay. It's how I organize things. I'm a very folder-based, hierarchical sort of person, and that's why outlining seems to work well for me, even if I don't always stick to the outline. Scrivener's method of organization in the binder really helps me think things through. When I have reached the point where I'm going from free form into Scrivener, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll sit and I'll think through what scenes do I need to write? And if I was going to name them something, what would they be named? Not cutesy names that I might show a reader, but just names that remind me what they are. Montington kills somebody. Montington goes to the well, something like that. And Scrivener allows me to simply create an unsorted list of scenes that I can then go back and sort into chapters. I can write scenes out of order. I can move scenes around. I can move chapters around. I can add chapters in the middle, depending on how my organization changes as I write. A lot of that comes organically as I'm doing the editing. So it's sort of a combination of both freeform handwriting using freeform and the pen and the iPad, and then moving that into Scrivener so that I can actually read it.
Mine's just scattered, like my brain. But it varies honestly person to person. So what works well for like me would not work for VE. And I don't think I could ever, or okay, that's a lie. I can't organize things. And I do keep some of the research organized with my drafts, but I use OneNote, which is the devil to VE. So, so I will keep some organized, but I'm very much the pantser. I guess one of the big things I will plan out is my character, which I didn't go into. I just went research and stuff. I actually have a character template and I'm working on a workbook for it that I flesh out my character as if I am doing an interview with someone and getting to know them. And that really opens the entire world for me in my head. Like it's amazing. I wish I could show people like the visual that happens in my brain when I create a character because it's just the entire book opens up for me and I'm like, I could write this. So that's a thing. I will get very serious about writing a book if I actually write out a character sheet. Before that, I'm just fiddling around.
I've learned to think about characters in terms of story hypothesis, which we have gone over in the past with our friend JP Rhineflesh the Ninth. And that helps me. A lot of my characters are based on me, which is problematic because then they all sound the same because they're all me. Story hypothesis and going through a character template that is short doesn't ask me 900 things about a character, but gives me prompts about what are the important points of this character? How does it vary from me? Is the character shy? Is the character not shy? Those kinds of things. What is the character's role in the story? That's very important. Do they help the protagonist along? Do they not help the protagonist along? Do they drag the protagonist back, the lead character? Or in the case of my second book, I'm doing two lead characters, which is a new stretch for me. So we're going to see how that works out. But how do those two characters interact? Because they're going to have to. Obviously, we're not going to have a story where two ships pass in the night and, neither of the twain shall meet. And then how does that lead into the next story? So all of this is sort of inchoate in my head until I get it to the point where I can start putting it honestly into scenes, into a firm event that happens at a specific place at a specific time in the story using specific characters. To me, that is a scene. A specific time, specific place, specific event, specific characters. If I can put those things together, I can make a scene out of it. And then I simply have to find the logical progression of one scene to another, which is sort of like climbing a mountain. The end of the story, the climax of the story is the top of the mountain. And how do I get from the bottom where the inciting event is up to the top? How do I get up the mountain? What do I have to do to get from where I'm at to the next stop on the mountain? Helps me think of it like that.
You've just got to bounce from like A to Z, but then go back to B and then hop over to P and jump to T and then go back to C
only if I want to confuse my reader. Now, some writers may want to do that, and I've seen that done to good effect. I'm not that good a writer, so I'm not going to do that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe for book number 27, I'll attempt something like that. But it's the same reason why I deliberately don't really write diverse characters, because I'm not good enough to write them well, and I think it's more of a disservice to write them poorly. So I'm not going to write them at all, at least right now. That's a place I want to grow as a writer. But in the meantime, we're gonna skip that. But it all comes back to the best way for me to record my thoughts. That's sort of the takeaway that I get from Shari's question is, what's the best way to record my thoughts? What's the best way to record my ideas? What's the best way to do the thinking? And for me, for right now, ask me again in 2 years, it's a combination of freeform writing on the iPad and drag and drop in Scrivener.
And mine's literally in all over the place.
And I know that it's common for people to have an ideas Scrivener document or an ideas Word document or Google Docs document or notebook in OneNote or whatever it is you use that's got a bullet point of ideas. What happens if story idea? What happens if another story idea? What happens if another story idea? What about this story idea? And it's just a bullet point list that people sometimes pick out of like their bullet journals. So any method that works is what works. And so there's not a right way or a wrong way to do this, except Catherine's way is always wrong.
I was just about to say, I don't have a bullet point. Actually, I think that would be really cool if I was like, what if this? How about this story idea? No, it's me like writing 4 pages worth of the start of the story and being like, nah, doesn't work.
Yeah.
Hence the amount of notebooks I have that only have one story started in them, by the way, and nothing else continued.
The best thing that I could tell somebody who doesn't have a method is to try and keep trying. You don't have to spend a lot of money on equipment. Google Docs is free. Many of us have Word anyway for school or for work. Many of us, you can get OneNote for free either for Mac or PC, and you can start keeping notebooks that way. So
Legal pad if you're handwriting.
Legal pad works great. Yeah, the ever popular notebook that you pick up at the stationery store that your average writer has 500 of, but they're so pretty and you don't want to mess them up and you got to buy another one instead. Whatever works is fine. For me, electronic storage works better because I have limited amount of space in my home and I am poor at managing paper. So if I don't have to manage paper, that makes my life easier, and it makes my housemate's life easier, my fiance's life easier, because she doesn't have to clean up all that crap. And then when she cleans it up, it gets lost and I hate it. So if I keep it electronically, she won't mess with my electronics. I don't mess with her electronics. Everybody's happy.
I will say that since I've gone to digital paper, it's much easier to organize in my digital little super note. But I've also found that I'm starting to run out of paper in my house because now I'm like, oh, I need a piece of paper, and I'll use the paper from back there to like write normal things, grocery lists, you name it. And now I'm being like, I don't have a notepad that sits on my desk anymore. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. I might have to get one just because. But I also haven't bought paper in almost 3 years.
Wow.
Yep.
I know.
Which is very impressive because I was extremely hoarder level because of the amount of story ideas that would be written all over them. He threatened to burn them.
I know what I need to send you for your birthday.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he was like, I'm going to burn them if you keep buying things. And I was like, never mind.
So that's the takeaway. The takeaway for me is it just depends on who you are, and you got to sort of find your method and see what's comfortable for you, and keep yourself open to the idea that what's comfortable for you may change over time as you evolve as a writer.
Yeah. I like to, if I'm starting to get serious with a story idea, think about what would be a new challenge for me in writing that I can grow with. So my steampunk, the Scandal's Pen, I wanted two main characters. That was very important to me. I wrote it with two main characters. You take one out, and literally, you do not have a book. My space opera, I wanted to have a cast that can rival Robert Jordan.
And it sounds like you're going that direction.
I am going that direction, but I'm also trying to keep it third person limited. It has been extremely difficult to do
It's
that.
a good exercise, though.
One chapter, a point of view. Like it's rough. I might change my mind on that and go back. But I like to try to see what I can challenge myself to grow as a writer when I'm trying out these story ideas to see how it would work for me and how maybe to find my voice better as a writer.
Alrighty. Well, that sounds like we've covered the topic at least a little bit for now.
Yeah, we hope we answered your question. If not, leave more questions for more clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we
Anybody's
will
welcome to get in touch with us.
hopefully, yeah, we can go further into details if need be, because I always love to word vomit at people, especially about my books.
Okay. Well, then I guess we'll see everybody next time.
Stay magical.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. You can find every episode on your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. For transcripts, please visit our website at revisionwizards.com. They go live the same day as our episodes.
If you'd like to reach out to us separately, you can find me at vegriffith.com and Miss Catherine at scribes-pen.com.
Stay magical. I still wave every time. Nobody's watching me. It is always a wave up the screen, like I'm actually doing little magical things off my fingertips.
Well, at least you're no longer doing the sign language episode number because nobody's watching.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. And I've gotten laxed on my numbers, so I really need to get back into that.